Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're doing another build, and it's another indoor model because it is the winter season and I like to do a bit of indoor flying during the winter months. So this time up it's the R Extra 260 from Hacker, and I've got all the components from Hacker as well, and bits and pieces which we'll go through. A massive shout out to Model Shop Leeds for supplying this kit for me, so please check out their website, which will be linked down below, along with the links to this model and all the accessories we're using. So let's have a look at what we've got. Okay, so first up, let's have a look at the accessories. So we have a T-motor to go inside, which, and I say I've used these before, you guys would have seen these on my channel, absolutely great motors. This is the AS2304. Absolutely tiny, but more than powerful enough. Let's pop that back in. And for speed controller, oh no, beg your pardon, battery there as well. Very nice. Mod Shop Leeds to also supply that. So we have the Overlander 500 milliamp pack, and that's a 2S battery. So we could try that out. Let's open up the ESC. So this is a Hobbywing Skywalker 15 amp ESC, which goes up to 3S, and this is the V2. Got some heat shrink in the packaging there, but super tiny and lightweight. Motor connectors on one side, which is great, but what I'll probably do, depending on the install, is I may take these off here and solder the motor directly onto the ESC. I've done that on a couple of my other models. It works rather well, just keeps the wiring a little bit tidier. Makes it hard to change the motor over, but typically you don't need to do that. Battery end, and then your connection for your receiver. So inside here we have the servos, two for ailerons, one for elevator, and of course rudder. And these are Hacker Master Force D 56MG digital servos, 5.6 gram metal gears. They look quite impressive. Try those out. And then finally, the propeller we're going to be trying out on this, pretty standard, 8 by 4.5. That seems to be the go-to propeller for a lot of my indoor models. Okay, let's have a quick look at the box and what it says on there before we start. So minimum 4 channels, it's 900 millimeters by 950 and should weigh around 180 grams. There's recommended motor, different languages on there, and nothing else on the other side. So let's get it open. And here we are. So if you've not built an indoor model before, don't be put off by the amount you have to do, because it's actually easier than it looks. They go together pretty quickly, which is what you'll see in a minute when we start building it. But here's one of the wings. Oh, very nice. I like that. I like those colours. The green and the pink, hope they're coming across well on the camera. Rudder. Nice big rudder section. All super light. We'll get this built and I will get the scales out and remember to weigh it. Part of the fuselage. Other wing, nice to have a matching pair. Okay, Czech Republic. And there's the main section of the fuselage. See, they will go together. Like so. We'll see at what stage we do that. Some other bits and pieces here. Wheel spats. Front section of the fuselage. part of the horizontal stabilizer, in 2 halves. Interesting. Find out why in a bit. Interesting wooden section here. Now I'm presuming this is to help get the model square when you're building it. If you think you've got two, well, you can see it actually here in the picture, you've got 2 sections, one going down, horizontal, vertical, going across, and I think this is a jig to help you get that square. So we'll have a look when we get that far. Now here's, I'll come back to the instructions, but here's the vast amount of carbon which sometimes can put people off. But like I said, it's pretty easy to put together, pretty easy to do, and there's all sorts of different lengths there, and they will probably be the right length or may just need a little bit of trimming as you go through, but it should all make sense. Lots of carbon there, and then some even longer pieces here. So let's get all that out and put it to one side. Intrigued to see what this is. So these are all parts of the horns of these will help you run the push rods. They keep the push rods, basically give the push rods support and keep them off the fuselage. And then you've got servo head horns there, one for the rudder, and a few different bits and pieces here as well. So we'll see how that unfolds, some linkages inside there, and even some Velcro, which will be probably for the battery. But I'll open that up when we get to it. So that's everything that's in the box. So let's have a quick flick through the instructions. Now it's nice they've actually provided instructions. Sometimes what you get instead is a QR code with a link to a website which has a PDF file which you then download and you can print off or just use it off the screen. We've actually got a physical copy inside here. Top flyer, almost unbreakable. Have you seen me fly? Right, okay, so looking through, so multiple languages in here, some guidance on how to set up the exponential and the movements for depending on what mode you want it, with basic, aerobatic or crazy. So you could set all 3 up and have that on a flight condition. Perhaps we would do that based on their recommendations. Tells you where the C of G is, tells you what you'll need to complete the model from the motor, various bits and pieces, and what equipment you need as well as you're building it. And also some hints here on checking the slot depth when you're putting the carbon into the foam. In other words, the carbon shouldn't be exposed, it should be as flush as possible with the surface, and that's going to give you the maximum strength. Parts list, that's pretty standard, and then you're straight into the building instructions, starting off with what looks like getting everything out of the box and getting all the servos ready, which is a little bit different to what I've done before, but I'm sure that shouldn't be an issue. So what we'll do is we'll go through now and start building it. I won't film every single step of the build, otherwise I'll probably make this video 2 or 3 hours long. I want to try and keep it short, and also want to show you the model flying at the end as well. Looks like some good instructions there. So I'll just show you some key points as we're going through, and then we'll go and fly it. And I'll give you my opinions as to how well it flies in comparison to other ones that I have. So how many steps do we have here? 89. No, a few more. 95. And there we go, guys. The first step is done, which was indeed preparing the servos. Matter of fact, that is the first 5 steps. So all you needed to do was locate the servo head extension and attach that to existing servo arm. Now they've suggested putting a screw through there to hold it tight and then gluing it. Normally you would bind cotton around these, but I'm going to go with their recommendation to see how it holds up. So there's 4 of those. Now if you do have a longer arm in amongst your servo heads, you can just use that instead. This is longer, but also wasn't as long as the ones that they had provided in the pack. So I suggest using the ones that I have provided, because you do want a lot of movement when you're flying indoors. Regardless of your style of flying, it's nice to have that extra movement. Walls come up quick, and where you've not got a lot of airflow going over the control surfaces, it's better to have some extra movement. So that is the first step. Obviously use my receiver as well to zero all the servos before we got going. And I'm going to be using the Futaba R3204SB, which is my go-to receiver for indoor flying. Nice, small and lightweight. So let's see what's next
we have to prepare the control surfaces by bending them over and leaving them for a couple of hours. That's just bending them over along the hinge line, which I'll show you in a minute, and then we can make a start on the fuselage. So let me show you what I've got over here. I just literally use some battery packs to weight over, that's the rudder, to weight over the hinge. So you do that on the rudder and do that on the two ailerons as well, and that'll be enough just to get those hinges working properly for you. So if you don't do that, there is a risk that you can put a bit of a strain on your servo. I didn't do it on my very first model I built, to be honest with you, and it's been absolutely fine, but I'm following the instructions this time around and leaving them weighted for a couple of hours with a couple of batteries there. Right, let's crack on. Okay, so the wings are now on the first part of the fuselage, as you can see there, and I've run two pieces of carbon, one through here, which actually bends round in a curve and goes inside a slot. That's pretty easy to put in, just make sure it's flush when you go there. And I've run the carbon along the front, which is just drying at the moment, of the leading edge as well. And I'm using batteries just to weight the wing down to make sure the wing is absolutely flat when I'm doing it. Obviously my bench isn't very big, so the fuselage is hanging off the end, but that's okay at the moment. Majority of the wing is on, or the main bits where the carbon is actually drying is on the bench at the moment. So next up, got to do some cutting. We've got some cuts on these carbon rods. So just when you thought you haven't got enough carbon rods, we're going to take some of the longer pieces, 5 of the longer pieces, and we're going to cut them into these sizes. So it's 2 at 220 with a bit of spare, which you throw away. Next two would be 390, which would leave you 110. Then 340, which will leave you a 90, then 230 as you make up millimeters, and then the last 340 has a 115 as well. So just take your time making sure that you get those right, because obviously once you cut, you can't go back. So measure twice, cut once. And there we go, that's all the rods, the 500mm rods that we've just cut in different parts, now in the wing sections and gluing. So basically you can't really go wrong. So once you cut them, they should fit directly in. So leading edge there of the aileron, cross piece through, trailing edge piece, and then the leading edge of the aileron through here as well. Appreciate you can't see all of that at the moment, so I've got weights on there, using the batteries to make sure the wing's completely flat. But that's that section done. And then you also just glue a few bits into the rudder as well to give that some support, including this piece here, which actually comes out. So I believe it's part of basically where the tail would be. There's not going to be a tail wheel on here, but it's going to stop this bottom of the rudder hitting the floor, which is why you've also got this piece here with a couple of bits of carbon we'll stick on shortly. So with all of that done, we are whizzing through, as you can see here. That's the bit I'm just about to do. And then we're on to whatever they are. Let's find out.
I wanted to take a minute just to show you this step 18, which I wasn't sure what these were because I've not seen these before, but of course it does show you on the next step as well. They're actually to reinforce the hinge line on the control surface, which I actually think is a really good idea. So you basically get a sheet, you cut it into 12 equal pieces just by folding it a few times and cutting along the folds. That's nice and easy to do, but then let me show you what it actually looks like. I've got one here. Now, don't stick it on like this, because you actually have to separate the backing. It's got a very thin backing on it. And there we go. So just use a sharp knife and you can take the paper backing off. That leaves a transparent film, which has got a reinforcement in it as well. I think they're fine fibres in there. You just see the cross section. And then what you do, if I show you on the rudder, which I've done already, you stick it down inside the hinge line. So obviously on this side, we've actually got the hinge, you've got a bit cut out, push it down inside there. Then on the opposite side, it just goes straight across. And then that gives you your hinge more reinforcement, which I think is a really good idea, because on some of my other models, which isn't the same make as Hacker, it's a different make, they've actually torn slightly here. So this will stop that tear. Right, just thought I'd show you that. Let's crack on.
Okay, so we're now on to step 29. I just thought again I'd pause and show you something here. Now that is already looking a bit confusing and I can't quite see what parts we're not to use. However, as you see there are some numbers, 22, and it is really about putting the cross bracing on the aileron, which is what we're just about ready to do. So my tip here is to always make sure you turn over the page to have a look. Sometimes it's clearer on the second page of what's happening. And you can see here, yeah, there's gonna be 4 pieces going into each aileron, into that center section there, and it is number 22. So if you go back to the beginning of the book, you can see here on this parts list, if you go down to 22, which is down here somewhere, there you go, there's 8 pieces of carbon, and then that's the size. So we know it's 0.8 gauge by 175 millimeters. Sorry about the camera shaking. And then we just go through all your carbon parts until you find ones that are the right size, which I've pulled out here. So there are only 8 pieces. So these are the right size. I don't even need to measure the gauge. I know there's only 8 of them and they're all 175 mil long. Don't need to cut them. So that is the 8 pieces that we need to put on 4 on each side, which I'll show you shortly. I quite like the idea behind this jig. So putting these supports in here for the braces, which you'll see in a minute, and they've supplied this jig, so just where it's gluing, you make sure that it's perfectly square. It's a nice touch. Okay, so next up we're getting the bottom of the fuselage ready. And I thought this was quite interesting, so I'll stop for a moment and show you this. Because what you need to do is run this very long, thin piece of carbon inside the bottom groove here. And again, it goes flush in. But then you also offer up the rudder as well. So if you can see, which separates slightly, it goes into the rudder. The thing is here is to not glue it. You're really just doing this to get the distance right here to make sure the carbon goes all the way up to this other piece. And then you're going to take that back apart and take it off and then just glue this in place. And then we won't put the rudder on until this section of the fuselage is actually on the other section. So bear that in mind, don't rush ahead and glue. It does show you in the instructions. As you can see here, step 38, just getting the piece ready. Step 39, there's a no glue sign. And then you see, just basically just getting the length right on part 15, which is this long piece of carbon here. So don't rush ahead, always check ahead in instructions. And you can see clearly in number 40, you've got the rudder section off again. And then you've got just gluing the carbon piece in there. And then 41 goes on to putting in some of the mounts for the undercarriage. So make sure you don't rush ahead and glue the rudder in. Okay, so I've just spent a bit of time trying to work out step 32, 33, 34, and indeed 35. And it's quite straightforward once you know how many things are. So basically we're making up the support here for the horizontal stabilizer, and these are just spaces and mounting. So there's actually quite a few bits going on here. You've got end piece, 2 center pieces. One goes on the one half of the elevator, the other half of the fuselage with a spacer in the middle. Then you've got your part where the servo is going to connect to with 2 spaces, and then just the opposite going the other way. And you see it's made up here, and they suggest to measure 158 mil from the end to the center piece as to where the servo is going to connect to, and the other bits just kind of slot into place. But you've got to be a bit careful with what you glue and what you don't glue. There's also some spacers there, which I didn't actually use, to be honest with you, because I didn't read the instructions properly, to be completely honest. But go through it slowly and it kind of works out. Now let me show you on mine. I've just done this. First off, ignore all the white bits. This is where I've used Kicker. So I've used super glue and then I've sprayed Kicker on top like this, and it's actually gone and made the glue white. So I will clean that up if I can be bothered later on, to be honest. But you can see this is basically how it goes. You've got the end piece, the bar running through, just gets glued. There's your spacer bits in the middle. There's the bit where the servo will connect to, make sure it's up at the right angle. And then that one still wants cleaning up. It does look messy, but you get the point. Goes in, if all works correctly, you should be able to pick up the fuselage, move this section here, and the 2 halves of the horizontal stabilizer / elevator will work together. So this bar basically gets glued to the foam and through the holes. It makes sense when you start doing it, trust me. Okay, so I feel like we're making some good progress now. We're up to about step 50 if you're following along with the build. So it's about halfway through. Just installed all these cross sections on both sides. Now you start off with 10 rods the same size, and then you start trimming them down as per the instructions. I installed basically the left and right hand sides together, then worked my way down, and I used this square all the way down, obviously with the model on the bench, to make sure it stayed square. I think you saw the aileron supports before already, and we just worked on these front supports here, putting these foam pieces in, making sure these rods, which were 500 cut down to 250 to make your two sides, left and right, but make sure they slot down in the middle there. So quite a lot of carbon work, but nothing too taxing. All the time as well, just making sure that the plane is flat, keeping it weighted down, because it's very easy when you start gluing these rods in, just start getting a bit of twist in the model, which you really don't want. It won't make a massive deal of difference, to be honest with you, depending on your style of flying. One of the early ones that I did build had quite a few twists in it by the time I was finished, and it still flies perfectly fine. But just try your best. Right, let's see what's next. Wow, okay, looks like a lot of gluing, and it looks like we're working on the undercarriage. Yeah, there's the two rods there. Okay, let's give this a go. Okay, so she's definitely taking shape now. I've just put this top section of the fuselage on and glued that in place, and it has these carbon spars running through to both sections. You can just see underneath there, and one in the front as well, which goes all the way through. Which is pretty easy, just thread it up from the bottom, sticks out the top, then you slide the fuselage on top, then another one through here as well. So it's definitely shaping up. Still no rudder on at the moment. Quick look underneath. I'm pleased with that so far. So where have we got to in the instructions? We're on step 60, which we're going to start connecting up linkages for the ailerons and the elevators and the rudder by the looks of it. And then onto the motor. Okay, so here's a close-up of the horns that are now in place. And I actually really like these. They slot in kind of here and here, and they just give you sort of a lot of support. And it's the same for the ailerons as well, as you can see underneath there. They just seem to be really well done, well manufactured. And then I've attached the rudder as well. So the rudder was a little bit fiddly. It kind of slots in from the back into the fuselage, and then glues, as you can see, around here and also underneath as well. And there is a piece of carbon that goes up and through it to give you a bit more strength. So just take your time when you're doing that. So it's actually coming together nicely now, starting looking like an aircraft. And I think the next step is to put the motor on, or the motor mount rather. Okay, so we're on the home straight now. So the servos are now in for the elevator and rudder. I'll show you those in a minute, as well as the ailerons. We've got our wheels and wheel spats on. The wheels are just actually kind of 3D printed plastic parts. They don't rotate. You don't really need that. And the spats just sit on top. Let me flip her over upside down. And here's the underneath. A whole load of carbon work going on for reinforcement, as you can see. And then there's our two servos for the ailerons, one for each side, just mounted at a slight angle against this foam piece that was installed on an earlier step. Again, there's a few bits of white where I've used kicker on top of Sino, you can just see there on the head, but I'm not too worried about that. If you guys want to build your own and be a bit more careful, obviously you can do so. And again, just here as well. But it's come together pretty easily. I always find doing carbon work a little bit fiddly, and working on something this size a little bit fiddly as well. I've got quite big hands, and sometimes it can be difficult to get in there, but if you just take your time, it should be fine. So last few steps, as you can probably tell, are to sort out the motor and the ESC. Do some soldering basically. So what I'm actually going to do is, rather than solder connectors onto the motor and plug them in, I'm actually going to solder it directly to the ESC. So I'm just going to pull back the heat shielding there and go straight onto those points. So we're going to end up removing these. There, put it there. Move these black wires out completely. It just makes it a little bit tighter. Obviously, before I do that, I need to make sure that I'm connecting them to the right parts and the motor spinning the right way around. So to do that, I first need to solder an end on for the battery. So we get that working, get it plugged into receiver, and make sure the motor's spinning. So I'm going to do all of that, and then I'm going to put it on the plane and then show you the finished aircraft, and then we'll go and fly it. Okay guys, let me give you a close-up of the installation, which was actually the last step. So as you see, the motor's on, and I have also put the prop on as well. As per normal, that's just held on by an elastic band, and the reason being that if you do hit the floor, it's got a bit of give in it, and the prop will give rather than ripping out the front there. Underneath hasn't quite worked out as I planned. Let me show you. Okay, so underneath, I've just hot glued the ESC right up front there. Now I didn't shorten the cables as I previously planned. I actually had some connectors in the end. I thought, you know what, I'll just put the connectors on there. So there is some excess wire there. That's probably just me being a little bit lazy. What I could have done is just taken the original wires off and put the motor directly onto here, just to save that mess there, but it's fine, that'll work for me. And then on the other side, I kind of made a bit of a mistake with the receiver. So I plan to use this one, which is the Futaba R3204SB. I thought it was 5-channel, and that was a mistake I made. It's actually 4-channel, and the last port is for S-Bus 2, which you can't change to a 5th channel. So this model needs 5 channels, because of course you have the 2 aileron servos, one on the elevator, one on the rudder, and of course the 5th channel being the throttle. So a little bit of a mistake there. Normally on the indoor models you only normally have 1 servo controlling the ailerons, but this has got 2, which is absolutely fine. So I just had to swap out the receiver for a temporary one, which is why it's all looking very messy on this side at the moment. Let me spin this round. There we go, that's better. So as you can see, I've swapped out the receiver for a temporary one. This I wouldn't normally use on this model. This is one that I had spare in the workshop, which is the R7008SB, and is far too big. So I haven't bothered tidying up the wires. I will attach the aerials down before I fly it, but I'll leave the wires like that because I'm going to swap that receiver back out for a 5-channel receiver, which will be a lot lighter. Talking of which, let's get this model weighed. So the model's just nose on the scales, and I'm just supporting the back of it. We're about 210, maybe just a shade under 210 grams. Now that is with the battery on, and I'm using the 500 pack there. So it is a heavier battery, and of course with that bigger receiver as well. So as far as control surfaces and movements are concerned, the instructions do have 3 different flight conditions you can set, or 3 different movements you can set for basic, aerobatic and crazy. I've not done any of that. I've just dialed in what I think is about right, and I'll fly it and adjust from there. And if I need a 3D rate, then I'll adjust that once I've set my first rates for normal flying. So this is what it's kind of look like at the moment. Ailerons, you see, nice and quick. Elevator, that's going to be more than enough, and it's probably going to be extra sensitive as well because it's got a full moving horizontal stabilizer, so that's going to be really effective when you're flying indoors, which is what you want. And then rudder, is more than enough. So a quick look at my settings for you, in case you're curious. I probably won't end up on these settings. So for aileron, I've currently got 75% or 75 movement on both directions with negative 40% expo. If we go on to elevator, you can see 75, 75, negative 40, negative 40, same as ailerons. And then finally on the rudder, I've got full movement plus 100. It can go further than that. You can go above 100 on Futaba, but negative 40 on the Expo as well, give me that line there. So that'll probably be okay to fly it. For the maiden, I'll more likely change that once we've had the first flight. But that's what we're going to do next. So that is build complete. I mean, overall, I was going to say it was easy build, but it wasn't really an easy build, because any model where you've got this amount of carbon on there can be a little bit challenging, and I think that's what puts some people off. But don't be challenged by it. Go and have a go. You will get through it. Just take your time with it. You can probably do a tidier job than I've done if you don't choose kicker, because it's the kicker that sets off the super glue super quick, but also makes that white residue on your model for you. And there's bits of white residue on this at the moment, but no one's going to see that because I'm going to be flying it indoors by myself. So I think that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to say this is probably build skill level, kind of like you probably want to be a 6 out of 10, but give it a go anyway. So let's go and fly it, see what it flies like. Let's get a few flights in on this one video so I can give you my verdict at the end. But so far, it's definitely a thumbs up from me. Okay guys, so this is the maiden flight of the Hacker R Extra 260. Let's see how she goes. Plenty of power.
No trim needed. In quite a small hall today. Let's see how that handles. A nice edge. Rudder's nice and responsive. All the controls nice and responsive. It just feels good. Oh yeah, that rudder, that stall turn. It loves that elevator with the full elevator movement. Horizontal stab moves. Almost scraped the floor then. Guys, this is super fun. It's different to my other models which fly a lot slower indoors, but this one's a lot more maneuverability. You can really throw it around. Let's try some rolls.
3 minutes.
Fine, and I can get much more movement this as well. I dialed the movement down, so you can definitely sharpen it up even more if you want to. Right, let's done about 3.5 minutes. Let's bring it in and see what the battery's like. Nice, that was just the first flight on that, and I really like it. I like the way you throw it around. It's really responsive. With that full horizontal stabilizer movement, you can really bring it in, just pop it into an angle, which I like. What I'll probably do is increase the aileron throw, and then we'll go again, so we'll get a bit more footage for you very shortly.
Wow.
Try a roll. Okay guys, so that's it in this video for this model. I really like it. Big thumbs up from me. And again, a massive thanks to Model Shop Leeds for sending this across and giving me a chance to review it. So I recommend you go and check these out. The link to their website, to one of these, is down below. And again, all the equipment lists will be in the description as well. So yeah, great fun. Definitely try indoor flying if you've not done it before. And I'll see you in the next one.